Good evening, everyone, and welcome to one more lesson in Tanya. Tonight's class, we will conclude second chapter and hopefully have a chance to begin the third chapter. The reason the Tanya is divided into chapters is because each chapter has a purpose or a project to cover. Just a very brief summary of what we studied until now in the last couple weeks. We discovered that a man possesses two souls, the animal soul, and about the way I'll return to it as a summary at the end of the chapter. But the animal soul is not evil. The animal soul wants pleasure, wants to enjoy here and now. If there is good food, if there is a party, if there is fun, that's sleeping, staying in bed, that's the animal soul. Another that enters as soon as a person is born. The second soul that enters is a godly soul. It enters in stages at the naming of a Jew, at the bris for a boy or girl when naming, at the bar or bat mitzvah, it's almost completed, and the real completion is at the marriage. That godly soul is a part of God and enjoys and needs to be fed godliness, serving God, bringing pleasure to God. These are the two souls we discovered. The Rabbi concentrated in the second chapter on the godly soul on many levels, one of which he compares it to a child born to a father and mother, where the DNA of the father is there, but in addition, not only the DNA of the father and mother is there, the connection to the father and mother continues while the child is still alive out in the street. Why? Says the Rabbi, that the brains, the mind of a child is a copy of the father and mother. And therefore, there is a direct connection to the during the entire life of the child to the father and mother's mind. The nails and the hair, and in between the brains and the nail and the hair, all derive their sustenance and energy from the brains. So via the brains, they connect to the father and mother. This is a seemingly simple way to explain. Says the Rabbi, in this universe, each one of us possesses a soul. The soul was descended just like in the time it takes for a child to be developed from the drop of the father, 9 months. Some of us go through the descent process longer, so they are far removed from God. Some of us went through a much shorter process and they are much loftier and holy. But it all comes from God, has nothing to do with the human being.
Which soul is this? The godly soul?
Godly soul. Only the godly soul. Huh?
So not at birth.
Of course at birth, but how long it took it to be born? For some people, the descent was 2 years. For some people, it was 2 months.
No, that I got. I thought you said that the godly soul doesn't come at birth. It comes in stages.
It begins its entrance at the birth,
Okay, so this is
but it will take time. Yes. Says, and therefore, you have different types, different levels of Jewish people based on their soul. Some are loftier, some are far removed, just like a human body. Says the Rabbi, just like a child, the hair, the nails, the skin, the vein, the bones receive their sustenance from the brain. Every Jewish person received their energy from the righteous man who provides the energy that comes from God. I hope you remember that, and we went through it in many details. Finally, said the Rabbi, last one we talked about is those who defile or those who hate holy men. Those who are looking to cause trouble to holy men. How is it possible that they get energy from a place they are not only trying to cut themselves off, but trying to hurt? Says the Rabbi, they receive their energy, but from their back. Anybody remembers, like a man who was ordered by the king to deliver a gift to his enemy, that he throws it behind his back without showing face to face. But it's absolutely necessary for everyone to receive the godly sustenance from the righteous man of the generation. So far is what we studied until this week. Everybody's understand that? Can we move on? The rabbi actually is about to introduce a third soul. However, by way of introducing it, the rabbi is going to address one more thing. The rabbi wants to teach us that the soul that came from God has nothing to do with the human being. On the other hand, the human being, the father and mother, can impact in a roundabout way the human being after it's born, but not the soul. The soul is pure and godly and from God directly. And the rabbi is going to address the Zohar, who teaches us that a soul or a human being is born based on the parent's behavior at the time of intercourse. And it is well documented in Jewish law that this is a very holy time, and therefore only holy thoughts must be taken at the time, and only thinking about each other and not having in mind other stuff, because it will affect the child that is being born. By the way, it's not necessarily physical children. There are many, many spiritual children that are being born from a father and mother when they are united, and the way the parents conduct themselves at the time of getting together will affect the children. How? So the Rabbi is addressing a question that seemingly the parents do have a lot to say about the soul of the child. And what the Rabbi will answer is that there is a third soul. It is easier for us to understand that because it will explain many, many things in later on as we discover. We call it the intellectual soul. The intellectual soul referred to another soul in another places in Kabbalah, and you'll hear from me interchange the names. We call it the garments of the soul. The garments of the soul will be directly affected by the behavior of the parents. And I'm giving you an introduction, so when we study it, it's easy to comprehend. What the Rabbi is saying is, if the father and mother conduct themselves in holiness, not forcing on each other, and not thinking about other things, but about how much they connect between themselves, what happens is they will create another soul, and so to say, a soul that will affect the child in many, many ways, making it easy for him to serve God, to be good, or not. And that will impact the child. We call it the intellectual soul, or in Kabbalistic terminology, we call it the garments. There are three garments to each soul. There are thought, speech, and action. And if a man is born from parents who could not care less, what happens is, in order for them to serve God and to be holy, they will have to overcome many obstacles and prove themselves. Those who are born to very fine parents, naturally, they will have the tendencies to become holy and to connect to holiness and to be humble and to be able to help others. And we see it. You can look at people, you can see people who same parents. You would see some children who are very, very refined, very kind, very willing to listen and to obey and to please. And there are children who are rebellious. Now, is this the only reason? No, but definitely it is the reason according to Kabbalah. And doesn't mean that the child is going to be wicked. It does mean that the child may have a greater challenge to overcome in order for them to perform and serve God. In addition, what the real goal of the Rebbe behind this whole discussion is to share with us that the soul have nothing to do with a choice by the parents or the children. It is directly from God, and the level of descent, how long will it descend? As we discover, longer descent, lower soul, it has nothing to do with the parents or the child themselves. It is a choice made by God. However, the mission to be carried here by the godly soul will only be happening through the intellectual soul, through the garments, because the garments enable the soul to serve God. You cannot serve God with study Torah without a body and the power of speech. You cannot perform kind acts unless there is an animal or another human you're being kind to. So you need to have action, which is the garments of the real soul, which is the intellectual soul. I'm just going to say at this point one more point, and that is that the intellectual soul can be serving the animal soul or the godly soul. It is a choice that the man will have to make every time, every situation is given. It's a crossroad, going to the right, which is positive, going to the left, which is not so good. This is between the godly soul and the animal soul. We're not talking about the evil desire, the evil inclination. It's a whole different ballgame, which we didn't even get to yet. Right now, we are introducing the third soul. I'm calling it the intellectual soul or the garments, and they are neutral. They can be serving or a servant, a maid to the animal soul or to the godly soul. Those garments, whether refined, holy, pure, or coarse or simple, are defined by the parents. So the parents have a lot to do with the child, but nothing to do with the soul. Ivan, you had a question?
Yes, so if you call those souls a garment, can they be taken off if they're wrong, or?
When a person dies.
Oh, so that's the only time, okay.
The intellectual soul is given to the human to assist in serving God or to disobey God. And therefore, it becomes subservient. It's literally a servant of either the godly soul or the animal soul. It's happy to serve. Now, if you have a fine soul, a humble soul, it will listen more often to the godly soul than to the animal soul. If someone has a very coarse intellectual soul, in order for them to be good, they will have to overcome many challenges. It may sound to us, it seems, a deficiency, but actually for those who overcome those challenges, it's a great attribute, because then they are rewarded much greater for overcoming all the challenge. You understand that? So we have people who, the rabbis in Tanya will address many details. The rabbi will address that some people have a tendency to happiness. They always give you a joke. Anytime somebody makes a joke, they have to listen and laugh. They must start their day with happiness, end the day with happiness. By the way, happiness is the single most important attribute to serve God. We have it on top. Ivdu et Hashem besimcha. Serve God with joy. That's on top of the ark. Joy is the catalyst for humility, for energy, for utilizing the day. Nothing is more important than joy. In fact, according to the Torah tells us that the worst punishment a person brings upon themselves is such a punishment that even God did not do, and that is depression, melancholy, sadness. So energy, life equals joy. The void of life is the opposite of joy. And therefore, so I started saying that some people by nature, they're always happy. That's their life. Good for them, they have a very good life. There are people who are very cold, calculated, slow. To make them happy will take a real talented comedian. You can't just make them happy. It's a great challenge. When they are motivated to be energized and be happy, they get reward many more than those who are naturally happy-go-lucky people. So when someone has a soul that is not so refined and they serve God, they end up making the right choices. It means that they had to work much harder to reach that point. Any questions? Somebody? Yes.
It's a question that comes up to mind when you say from the moment of conception. What happens? I don't know quite the answer. If halachi law allows in vitro fertilization or not in vivo fertilization, what happens in those cases?
So the truth is, it requires an entire course because there are so many details. There are some places where a surrogate mother is brought into the picture. There are some places where the semen is donated, but the mother is the real mother. There's many discussions. It really is very practical. There are people that that went through such processes that they chose not to share, but each case is different. How does it apply to our discussion here? I don't want to get into it because I said there are so many myriads of details that will change the reality. I want to talk about, in general, the ordinary natural way. If it is unnatural, you'll have many opinions. I should tell you that a couple of years ago, I assisted a couple here in town. And based on a rule, I'm not going to get into the details, based on a rule in one particular way. 3 weeks ago, I got a call from Boca Raton, a rabbi whose wife cannot get pregnant, and they found a surrogate mother to carry the baby. Someone will take his semen and carry the baby. This is a rabbi. And we happen to know the girl. She lives in town. Now he wants me to assist in certain ways. Based on a ruling that I followed a couple of years ago, I said to him, that's not the case. He said, no, that's the law is the opposite of what I said. And I had, so to say, a heated discussion. And at the end, you didn't get my email? Oh, because I sent you. I did not send an email about reminder. If you want, I'll send a reminder. It's about Zoom. You asked for a Zoom, no? You didn't get it? All right. Anyway, so he told me the chief rabbinate of Israel agrees with me. So
Agrees with you?
no, with him,
Oh.
but the Sephardic chief rabbi. and he's Sephardic.
Oh.
So I said to him, I will respect, they needed my assistance in a certain way. So I said to him, I will obey as long as it's part of halacha. So they got me the institution. It's called Efrat. It's an institution that's made specifically to assist people with difficulties. And they have rabbis on the staff to make sure, because they follow halacha. They clearly follow halacha. And I got a rabbi, he got me a rabbi from that institute to talk to me. And he said to me, we follow, and this is a rule. He gave me the source of the chief rabbi, Sephardic rabbi that rules that way. So I said, if that's the case, I will assist, and I assisted. The reason I'm sharing it to you is because it's very practical, the question you're asking. And in addition, not only there are so many details even with the same exact situation, some authorities maintain one way, the others will maintain exactly the opposite. So it's very difficult to address it just briefly. We will stick to a normal father and mother that are married. And what happened to a child born without a father? 2 weeks ago, a lady walks in. She says to me, I'm a Kabbalist. And she wanted mezuzah. 3 years, she didn't have a mezuzah in the house, but she's a Kabbalist. She lives here in 3 years already. And I said to her, she said, I want to see the mezuzah myself, because I can tell which one a holy rabbi wrote it and which one is not. Anyway, I open up 30 mezuzah. I have 30 parchments open. I usually buy them rolled, but it's very difficult to get them these days. I don't know if anybody knows, there's a shortage in Torahs and mezuzahs. So when I was in Israel, I got mezuzahs on condition that they're not going to be rolled. The guy says to me, I have no time, and I can give it to you. So I got a stack of 30. She needed 7. So I opened up, no, not good. This good, that's good. Now, they're all the same scribe, but she was reading and she was sniffing or whatever. Anyway, she picked up 7, and this was 2 weeks ago on a Thursday. And she says to me, come to my house to put a mezuzah. It's in town. Why is she having a mezuzah? Her daughters, she has 3 children. Her daughter is celebrating bat mitzvah on Shabbat. And she had guests from Canada and from Israel that came to celebrate the bat mitzvah. And the guests told her, friends, not family, friends told her, a house without a mezuzah, can't have a bat mitzvah in the house without mezuzah. So they made her come here and buy the mezuzahs. Anyway, so I said to her, bat mitzvah, that's wonderful. And can I make a prayer for her? What's the father's name? She says to me, She has no, my daughters have, my children have no father. She's never married. She got a donor, and that's it. She don't even know. And they never had a father, from the Holy Ghost. So today you can have all kinds of situations. We are talking about, so the point I'm making is you can have a relationship without being married, and then the levush, the garments are very, very unclean. We're talking about, that's the purpose of marriage, to be gifted with those refined, provided all the conditions are met. If someone having a child without being married, they are not provided with all that. So they may have, as we'll discover, we'll read it in the text soon, we may have a very holy man. In fact, as I said, the holiest souls were given to people that were very simple, at least very simple, if not worse. However, they had to overcome such great challenges because their garment were very, very coarse, because due to what the parents contributed. And now we can read it in the text.
What page?
We are page 63. Having concluded that every Jew has a holy soul, which emanates from above, from supernal wisdom, the Alter Rebbe now states that even the quality, the rank or level of each individual soul is determined only by factors from above, spiritual factors, such as the soul's above-mentioned descent through ishtalshelut, through the descent. No actions of this physical world can determine its quality and rank. I hope you understand by now. The soul will come from God, go through the descent, longer, more coarse, shorter, much holier, has nothing to do with anybody here in this universe. The Alter Rebbe makes this statement indirectly by clarifying a question from the Zohar, which seems to indicate the contrary. And here is the Rabbi's quote from the Zohar. As for what is written in Zohar and in Zohar Chadash, that the essential factor is to conduct oneself in a holy manner during sexual union, which is not the case with the children of the ignorant and the ilk who do not conduct themselves thus. Zohar said, a human being future is dependent upon the behavior of the father and mother at time of union, at the intercourse. When they united completely, it will affect the child to be a holy child. Otherwise, it will affect the child in a negative way. The ignorant, as the Zohar goes on to imply, draw down for their child a soul of lower level, which seems to indicate that an action occurring in this physical world can, in fact, affect the soul's level. Not so, declares the Alter Rebbe. The Zohar is not referring to the soul at all, but to the soul's spiritual garment as follows. When the Zohar uses the term soul, it refers to a soul that is external to the human, and in other words, it would be used, we will use the term garments to it. This is, and the Rabbi continues, because no nefesh, ruach, and neshama is without a garment which stems from the nefesh of his father and mother's essence, says the Rabbi. When a father and mother get together and they unite together, they will create the garments, which is the intellectual soul, as we call it, to the child. Every nefesh, ruach, neshama, we already discovered that every soul, the soul is made out of 5 parts. 3 of them enters the body, and they are called nefesh, ruach, neshama. Those 3, nefesh, ruach, neshama, each must have an intellectual soul or a garments in order for them to function in this universe. And this is created directly by the parents, and therefore it will have an effect on the human. However, it has nothing to do with the soul itself. The core of the human, which is the soul, is directly determined by God. all the commandments that it fulfills are influenced by that garment. It is through this garment that the soul achieves its ability to affect the body and to perform the commandments involving physical matters. Even the benevolence that flow to one from heaven is all given through the garments, because the soul is so strongly bound up with this garment. The soul referred to the garment in this context as the personal soul. The rabbis say that there is nothing you can do without those garments. You cannot serve, who came to this universe to serve God, to prove God that we are worthy to be his children. How do you prove it? With thinking properly, with speaking properly, with acting. These are the three garments, as we'll discover in great length. The Zohar, because they are so united with the soul cannot move, cannot do or not do anything without those garments. Therefore, he calls it soul. But the soul in this context is what we call the intellectual soul, and it will affect the soul, the godly soul, or the animal soul serving or disassociating themselves from God. Yes.
So every soul has a garment.
Every soul in this universe must have a garment.
So the nefesh, the ruach,
And neshama,
they
each
all
have,
have their own garment.
right.
Thank you.
Now, there are three parts of the same. Those three are three different qualities within the one soul. So when I say soul, I refer in general to nefesh, ruach, neshama. Each of them, or all of them together, are so to say dressed up or connected with three garments. And they are thought, speech, and action as well. In a moment, soon, next chapter is the rabbi is going to get to it. Now, if the person said, now the rabbi is talking about the effect of the parents on their children. If the person sanctifies himself, he will bring forth a holy garment for the neshama of his child, thereby enabling the child to serve God more readily. So the garments, that intellectual soul, is affected by the way a person conducts himself during intercourse. If we are holy and with holy thoughts and doing it with the great respect, then it's create a very holy garments. However great a soul it may be, it still needs the father's sanctification at the time of intercourse. So when God is giving him a very holy soul, if the parents at the time of intercourse are not conducting themselves properly, that soul will have a lot of challenges to connect to God, even though it's a very lofty soul. But the soul itself, as distinct from its garment, is not affected by the parents' sanctification. In fact, it sometimes happens that the soul of an infinitely lofty person comes to be the son of an ignoble and lowly person. All this has been explained by Rabbi Yitzchak Luria of blessed memory, the Arizal, in Lekutei Torah and Parshat Vayera, and Tamei HaMitzvot and Parshat Bereshis. Thus, the physical world of which the parents are a part can in no way affect the soul's spiritual rank. Even the statement of the Zohar, that the essential factor regarding the state of the soul is the holy manner of the conduct during sexual union, pertains only to the soul's garment. In the soul itself, however, with all its various levels, emanates from above. And that's the conclusion of second chapter. Let me just summarize very briefly what we studied in second chapter. So again, you have the animal soul, that chapter 1 at the end. The animal soul is one created by God, given to a human to challenge, to convince him to misbehave, to be bad, to enjoy oneself. That comes the moment the person is born. Egotistic, self-centered, cannot see anybody other than himself. Every time he's asked to do something, they ask, what's in it for me? That's the animal soul. It's not evil, it's not bad. Then the godly soul enters in stages, but it's part of God. You will have different levels of godly souls, but in essence, it's the same spark. It's only the descent through the four universes that matters how the soul will be in this universe, just like a body has many, many parts. Some are low, some are higher, greater quality, low quality, greater quantity, smaller quantity. It all to do about the process by which they were created. If it took longer in the incubations in the mother's 9 months, it became a much lower level. The same is the descent. The longer the descent, the lower the soul. Then we are introduced to a third soul. And by the way, and one more part, the godly soul is the one that connects the person to God. How do we connect to God back? It has to go through the righteous man of the generation. That just like the body is connected to the brains and the brains connected to the father and mother. The third soul, the intellectual soul or the garments of the soul are affected by the parents. Parents can gift a child with great garments, which means it will be a lot easier for the person to serve God and live a good life, or the opposite. Those garments are part and parcel of the human, and they will conduct themselves dressed up by the animal soul or the godly soul based on the choice. If there is more coarse garments, it tends to connect to the animal soul before it connects to the godly soul, so it will be a greater challenge. These are this is the summary until now. Any question before we get to the third chapter? Yes. No, you missed that part. The evil inclination is a desire to do evil, and that's not nefesh haba'amit. It's not the animal soul. Very clear. Animal soul is just like an animal. There's nothing bad. There's nothing bad. You have domesticated animals, you have wild animals, you have all kinds of animals. The nature of an animal is that it's just about myself. Fight or flight, right? To survive, to live, to enjoy. When you say someone, can you cross with me the street? He's going to ask what for? What am I going to get from it? Are you going to pay me for it? Are you going to make me? Are you going to honor me? You're going to announce it publicly? Then I'll do it. Otherwise, I'm not interested. So it's all about themselves. It's self-centered, egotistic. The godly soul is selfless. It's about God. So serving God is the goal. The intellectual soul is there to stand and watch the fight between the two souls and allow one soul to dictate, and that will it follow. The parents can make it easy, or the other way. As I said, most of our oral Torah is given to us by people whose parents were very coarse and gave them garments that were very, very far from holy. Yet, because overcoming, they came over those challenges, they were gifted with the gift that are enormous. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir, Shmaya Naftalion, Ovadia Ger. There are people in the Jewish history, by the way, the written Torah is given to us by Moshe. The oral Torah is given to us by all converts. Anybody knows that? Do you know last week you had Esau and Jacob in this Torah portion? What did he say? Is that Isaac loved Esau. Why did he love Esau? Why did? Huh? No, that's not the reason. Because he fed him well. How does the Torah read it? Kitzaid bepiv, because game is in his mouth. Now, there is many interpretation to that. One is that he always fed it. He used to go hunting, and he would give Isaac good food. He respected, he honored his father. Kitzaid bepiv, we studied on the Shabbat morning that he used to cheat his father with his mouth. He used to hunt his father. He deceived his father to think that he's righteous by asking him all kinds of questions. But the Kabbalah interpretation is Yitzchak saw the source of Esau, who is the source of Rome and Greek, all the nations, not Ishmael, not the Semite. And Kitzaid Befiv means he knew that from the mouth, the Torah that goes through the mouth, which is by heart Torah, Torah shebe'al peh. How do you say Torah shebe'al peh? The oral Torah. Oral Torah in Hebrew we call it shebe'al peh. there is Torah שבכתב, written Torah, and there is Torah שבעל פה. Titzait befiv is because he saw that Esau is the one who is going to give the Jewish people, or the world, the oral tradition. The entire Torah שבעל פה comes from Rabbi Meir, whose parents were Greeks. Rabbi Akiva was the student of Rabbi Meir. I'm sorry, he was the master of Rabbi Meir, who was the Roman converts. Today we understand Torah, and Rashi based the Torah on Onkelos. Onkelos is a Greek name. He himself converted. He became one of the giants. Shmaya and Naphtalion kept the Jewish tradition at one time in the ethics of fathers right at the beginning of the chain. So you have the oral tradition comes from the Esau, the hunter, the not Jewish source. And the reason is because when they overcame those challenges, mighty challenges, God gifted them with a very special treasure. And that's one explanation to last week's portion when Yitzchak loved Esau, because Yitzchak saw the future. He knew that the gift of oral Torah is in this child. One second, Ina, you had a question.
Pertaining to last week's how do you explain them twins, like the time of conception? They were different.
Wow. Oh, they are different, but they have the same garments.
What do you mean? Different garments, but they were completely different souls?
Yeah, Jacob and Esau, right? For example.
Yeah.
If one is Jewish, one is not. But the
Okay,
parents are both
so
Jewish.
is this the first time you hear this concept? So to me, I apologize to you because to me it's so obvious. I studied it when I was 7 years old, so it's like I can see it. So, but let me explain. When you have identical twins, does that mean that they have the same fingerprints? Why not? Identical twins. The answer is, with all the identity that is similar, they are unique. When I am faced with a challenge, should I be kind to my wife or not, which I have no choice. But when I faced with it, and also with my children, because they'll report me or they'll remember it forever. But someone, a stranger, never met before and I'll never see. Let's say in New York in the airport, I'm about to board a plane and they ask me a favor. I need to make a choice. That choice is given to me with certain conditions that will never reoccur ever before or after. So I may be making a good choice, but under another day, let's say I did not have breakfast that morning, or another day I was late to my flight, or another day I was there with a friend, I might make a different choice. Therefore, when we do a choice, good or bad, but let's talk about good, we always are rewarded as if we make the choice for the first time, even though I've made the same decision many, many times, because there's no such thing as the same. Do you understand that? So my choices is I get credit for, or I pay for my choices. When I have an identical twin who's born with the same exact garments, and we both face the same exact challenge, same restaurant, same person asking for a favor, we are given a unique challenge to each one of us that has nothing to do with the other. And therefore, sometimes one will choose one way, the other person will choose another way. It's not the same. Life is going to be unique. This is the only one. God has the same mold. The Torah tells us God is so unique that he has the same mold, yet he created human beings that all are not only look different, but act differently, think differently, desire differently, even though it's the same mold. No other factory, nothing similar to it, nothing even close. And in that way, a human being is unique. Did I answer?
Esau, you said, is not Jewish?
There is a dispute in the Talmud if Esau was Jewish or not. I think we studied in Sanhedrin. You should. Either he was an Israelite mumar that converted out, or he is considered not Jewish.
But he can't convert out.
Right.
So he
But-
can't be
but-
that, and he can't be not Jewish because he came from a Jewish mother.
And he also was certainly not.
Coming from a Jewish mother has nothing to do until the Torah was given. This is not a Jewish person.
So all the patriarchs are not Jewish.
Until God chose them.
But the Torah hadn't given you.
God chose them. God chose Abraham as the first Jew. His son Yitzchak, he chose as the second Jew. Rivka, when he converted her to Judaism, by the way, what do you mean they didn't keep? God says in the Torah, Ekev asher shama Avraham bekoli vayishmor mishmati chukotai torotai v'mitzvotai. It's in the Torah. In last week, after Abraham died, he already blesses Yitzchak, and he says that. By Abraham, is revealing a secret because he's keeping. So where does it come from? When was Yitzchak born? Do you know when Yitzchak was born? On a holiday, I'll give you a hint. Which holiday?
Rosh Hashanah?
Passover.
That's when-
How do we know?
Of course,
Because-
Of
The
course.
angels came next year the same year.
Because he ate matzah, umatzot afava yochel. He baked the matzah, and they said to him, next year this time you'll have a child. So we know he was born on Passover. It's,
we know matzah wasn't sold.
but matzah, they didn't live. They did it. These are the reasons God gave us, but that's not the true reason. The true reason is because God wants us to serve Him. So this is a whole different discussion. But Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were Jewish and served God. There's a dispute if Esav was a Jew that left, or he's considered, or he is not Jewish. It's a Talmudic, it's not Kabbalah, it's a Talmudic discussion. But it doesn't matter. The oral tradition, Vayehav Yitzchak et Esav, Yitzchak loved Esau, Kitzait befiv, because a game is in his mouth. A Kabbalah interpretation is because the game of mouth, meaning the oral tradition, oral mouth, comes from Esau. All the founders of that gave us the oral tradition. By the way, anybody is familiar? It's Talmudic. It's not Kabbalah. Moshe asked God to show him the generations to come. And he showed them until he saw Rabbi Akiva. And he saw Rabbi Akiva is learning every letter that to mean many, many interpretations. And he turned to God and he says, who is this? And God says to him, that's Rabbi Akiva, who is learning the Torah based on the oral tradition, based on the principles, 13 principles of oral tradition. He's diving into the Torah and he's bringing out pearls and diamonds that nobody heard of. So Moshe turned to God and he says, he deserved to give the Torah. Why am I chosen? Anybody familiar with that? He says to God, are you familiar with that?
But he's getting the Torah from you.
No, he said, no, that's the second. He says to him, quiet, that's my choice. I have no reason. I don't have to give you a reason. But Moshe, when he saw what Rabbi Akiva does to the Torah, he says to God, he's more worthy to give the Torah than me. And then God says to him, and then he fell, he lost his mind, Moshe, and God says to him, come down, because all these teachings and revelations are from the Torah that you are giving them. So you're the first. But he asked God to give Rabbi Akiva before, the Rabbi Akiva is much greater. And God said, that's my choice. So the oral Torah, the real Torah that we have, because the non-Jews are able to take the written Torah. The written Torah is taken by many religions, by many groups. The oral tradition, they are unable to. This is the greatest gift that God gave us, came from Esau, from not Jewish. Why? One of the reasons is because for them to have parents who are not holy, I'm not advocating that's the right way because it's a sin, but they were not Jewish, so for them it's not a sin. When they conceived those children, they had given them garments which were not holy. And therefore, for those children who found God and converted, they went through the Sahara Desert. They had to go through a major challenge. And for that, God says, you deserve to get deeper into the Torah. Anybody know Rabbi Akiva hated scholars when he was young? Rabbi Akiva used to say, if I find a rabbi in a corner or in an alley, I'm going to rip him apart like I rip apart a donkey. Anybody knows? Why does he use a donkey? There is a whole Kabbalah interpretation. You'd say, I'd rip him apart, I'll take him apart into pieces. That's how much he loved sages. He didn't know how to read Hebrew or to read and write Hebrew, but he had parents. Yosef is his father. that converted and had a child in holiness or whatever. And later his mind opened up. Took him 40 years, but he became one of the greatest sages that we have today, the old tradition. Same as Onkelos. People don't understand the depth of the Onkelos because it's Greek. But I'm not trying to pride myself, but I study so much of the Onkelos every year, and Rashi brings Onkelos. Suddenly you see the gems that how Onkelos was able to interpret the Torah in such a beautiful way that the words in Hebrew mean totally different, but based on his understanding, it comes out way better, much greater. That's why no Hebrew book, no Torah that in Jewish tradition is printed without Onkelos. You cannot, because one without the other, it's impossible to understand. Let's get to third. Any other questions? No other questions. Okay. After having discussed the idea in the first chapter of righteous, wicked, and a Benoni. Remember a Benoni, the middle one, has no sins. However, in his inside, internally, he has a great challenge. Second chapter, talking about the three souls, mainly the godly, the animal soul, and the intellectual soul that's in the middle, that will be partner with one of the two. Now the rabbi is going to go through details of each soul, how it is made up. I want to give you an introduction so that when we get to study, we can understand it better. I have some questions here about conceiving children. We'll talk about it at the end of the class, please. What I wanted to say is, as we begin the third chapter, we will discover that the soul has 10 faculties. We're going to talk about the 10 sfirot. You heard it from me before, and I have a diagram that we're going to be able to connect to, a simple diagram I printed. However, I want to make sure in the outset, I don't feel it's appropriate to keep reminding you. You need to know, to remember that the animal soul or godly soul are not the 10 attributes. The 10 attributes are channels in which they funnel or they express themselves. So when I say it has 10 attributes or it's made of 10 attributes, it's not made of 10 attributes. It's pure power, just like a DNA, just like pure electricity. It has different faculties. It can have a fan blowing cold air or a fan blowing hot air. It can make ice or it can make fire. It all depends how it manifests itself. There are 10 faculties by which they manifest themselves. They are not what the souls are. Is that clear? Can we get it out of the way? That's number one. Number two, we're going to talk about 10 faculties. And they are divided into, as now, it can be divided in many ways. There are 10 attributes. I'm going to call it sfirot. Sfirot is from sapphire. Sapphire is shining or expressing light. Sphira is also number. Mispar in Hebrew is number. 10 sfirot is 10 attributes. Why are they 10 attributes? Because they are unique in expressing the soul in a specific way. The best way to explain it, you see this bottle, the water bottle? If the water inside is the energy of the soul. If this bottle was green, you would see green water from outside. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. If the pitcher or the bottle or the glass is red or purple, the water will look like they're purple. Are they really purple? They've never been purple. They're not green. How do I know? If you pour it out of the bottle into another glass, they will stay colorless. They didn't change color. Nothing was mixed in the water. The water are clear. But the vessel, the channel that contains them, gives them a color. Is that clear? So the soul is pure like water is colorless. But you pour it into a pipe, to a hose, that will channel the energy into green, red, blue. So Electricity is the same thing, by the way. It's power. We don't even know what it is. But if you plug a blender, it will cut vegetables. If you plug that into a camera, it will take photos. A computer or a printer will print color pictures. It all depends on the what we call conduit, how it manifests itself. But you can take back that electricity and use it for something else. It didn't change. The idea is, the other introduction is that those powers are functioning through the channels, but did not change even while they are functioning in a specific way. So you can always draw them back and put them in another channel. Did you understand that? Just like water, like electricity. If you look at the image, those of us who can look here, 3, 6, 9, 10. Forget about this, or forget about this, whichever you want. There are two ways on which the 10 attributes go. One way to look at it is linear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Another way is right and left. I choose right and left because over the years, even though when I studied, by the way, right and left, never. Until I got married, I studied the 10 attributes countless times and always was one above the other. However, I found that it's way, way easier to accept or to digest when you look at it in that way, because it's actually an image of a human being, as we'll discover in a moment, because every one of the 10 attributes goes into one part. Is anybody did not hear about that before? Everybody heard about that, so no news, right? Okay, very good. What we will discover today is that it's divided into two categories. We call it mothers and children, offsprings. How many mothers we have? 3 in the 10 attributes. In more specific, we're going to call it father, mother. But in general, they are mothers. Why they are mothers? Because they give birth to the 7 attributes. So what's responsible for the 7 attributes? The first 3. You have 3 mothers, they will give birth. So the guy that has more of the mothers, bigger mothers, will bring more stronger children. Smaller mothers, smaller not in quantity, but smaller in quality, they will bring forth a much smaller offsprings. The offsprings are affected, that's the natural way by human, by the mothers. Is that clear so far? Now we're going to say one more thing. The mothers are what we call intellectual attributes, 3, and the children are emotional and action. So the emotions and the action should be dictated by the mind, by the 3 intellectual. And that's why the human being is the only animal, the only creature that stands high, so that the head is above the torso and the legs. These represent emotions, the heart, and the legs represent action. All 7 are here, 3 are here. It should be in charge. How do you call someone who is fully in charge? We call him melech. What does melech stand for? King. Melech is made out of how many letters? 3. Mem, lamed, chaf. Mem is mochin, moach, brains. Lamed is lev, emotions, heart, and chaf is kaved, liver. Liver is responsible for the action, as we'll discover. So melech, you want to be a king, you have to allow and remember the brains control the entire body. What happens to someone who allows his heart's desires to control? As we'll discover, by the way, the godly soul is here, the animal soul is here. What happened to someone whose heart is in control? We call him a lemech, a lemelech. Anybody heard of a lemel, shleimazo, lemel? It's from the word lemech in the Torah. There was a man who was called Lemech that unfortunately killed his wives. Anybody knows the story? Lemech? It's in the Torah. I read it 3 weeks ago. Why lemor comes? Well, you heard the shlemazol, lemor? Where does it come from? It comes from the Bible. There was a man who had a bad luck. And one day he went shooting and he thought there was an animal. It happened to be his grandfather, Chaim. Chaim was in the field, he killed him. When he came closer, he said it's his grandfather. He got so mad and he says, oh gosh. And there were his two wives who were next to him. And he killed them both. So the Torah,
Where was his son?
Huh?
His son took life.
he says, Ki yeled haragti, but it was his, you're right, his son. He cried to his women. You're right, I'm so sorry. He killed his child. And his wives ran away from him. So he says, why are you so running away from me? I didn't mean to. I went hunting. And my child happened to be standing here. He had bad luck no matter where he turned. So first his grandfather, then his child, then his wives ran away. It's in the Bible. We read it in the Torah. It's not a addition to the Torah. The point is that lemech stands for lev, heart, moach, kaved. He controls, he convinces his mind what's good and what's not. So the doctor said no sugar, but he likes the chocolate. So he convinced the mind only one time, only tomorrow we'll start diet. That's what happens. So the mother is sitting here and is controlling the heart. So if someone says, I'm mad, I can control myself, we say to him, use your brains and think for a moment, that will calm you down. If someone has desire, we say to him, use your mind to calm yourself down. The mind is not only the key, is the one that creates the emotions. If it's not the same, there are people who unfortunately are spiritually sick and it doesn't work that way. They need to realize, acknowledge that and reverse it and be able to work on themselves where the mind is in charge of the heart and the liver. I want to read, we have 2 minutes. I want to read just a little bit. Now, says the Rabbi, page 66. Each of these three distinctions and grades, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, consists of 10 faculties. Does not consist means manifests itself through, but it's not part of the neshama. Corresponding to the 10 supernal sphirot, divine manifestations, in which they originate and whence they descend. The 10 sphirot are subdivided into 2 general categories. These 2 categories are 3 mothers, that is, 3 of these sphirot are termed mothers, for they are the source and root of the other 7 sphirot, as a mother is the source of our offspring. And 7 doubles, the 7 divine attributes called doubles, inasmuch as they are of the emotional attributes, manifest itself in a twofold manner, as shall presently be explained. The Rabbi will say that they are called doubles for a reason, those 7 attributes of emotions. Emotions in general, but it includes actions as well. You can have them both ways, and it's called doubles for many, many reasons. I would like to stop here. I just want to read 2 questions. If parents didn't have holy thoughts during intercourse, it affects the child's soul. Is there a way parents can correct it after the fact? Actually, a very good question. And the Rebbe addresses that. And the Rebbe told a couple who have felt that they did not do well for their child. And the Rebbe says, by going out and making other couples do it in proper way, by going to the mikveh before and realizing that God is watching and they affect their children forever, they will be able to affect and repair what they're missing by their own children. If a baby was conceived by a surprise and parents didn't want the baby, it will affect the soul. Is there anything parents can do after the fact to help the child? It's the same story. It has nothing to do with the intention of the parents. It's a gift from God. But when the parents' involvement is come to place, if it was done properly, it would bring a very holy garments and vice versa. I would like to conclude here, and God willing, we'll continue next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amazing, Rabbi.